Hello and welcome to this presentation of our SHPO Everyday Oklahoma, Fascinating Stories about Familiar Places. Our presenter today is our own Michael Mays. Mike is he's our new National Register Coordinator. He has a BA in History from Southwestern Oklahoma. Mike, I'm going to mute your sound for a second. Sorry. He has a BA in history from, Southwestern Oklahoma State University and an MA in museum studies from Oklahoma University. He's a lifelong citizen of Oklahoma and is currently our National Register Coordinator for the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office. Before joining us here, he was the survey coordinator, and before that, he spent 14 years as a history teacher and a subcontractor for historical research and genealogy. While completing his MA, he worked for the Cork Public Museum in County Cork, Ireland, where he transcribed personal letters of Irish revolutionary leader Michael Collins from the Peter Barry collection while assisting with the centennial celebration of Ireland's independence from the United Kingdom. And his presentation today is, Calabooses in Oklahoma. And so, Mike, I'm handing it over to you now. Thank you so much.
Somebody let me know. All right. Okay, so I am the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO as we like to call it, National Register Coordinator. I'll go ahead and apologize for the banjo playing. I'm just kind of hoping that Ken Burns will someday take notice and hire me for his next documentary. So anyhow, today I'll be briefly discussing what the National Register does, along with our thematic survey of Oklahoma's Calabooses. I should have an article published in the winter edition of the Chronicles of Oklahoma that will go into much further detail if you are interested in picking up a copy of that. At the end of this presentation, I'll provide a few links where you can go online to view the story map that accompanies this survey report and other resources. So let's get started. So in 2023, SHPO conducted a thematic survey to document all early standalone jails across the state. This survey would also be used to create a multiple property document from the National Park Service. This MPD is intended to provide context for individual listings in the National Register of Historic Places for early jails constructed in Oklahoma from 1904 to 1940. 1904 to 1940 is the established period of significance for the jails, but there are a few that fall outside of this time period. So before we dig into the survey report, a quick rundown of the National Register. What is the National Register of Historic Places? So the National Register was established by Congress in 1966 for the preservation of historic properties. The National Register is essentially a catalog of buildings, structures, sites, objects, and districts significant in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, or culture. The National Park Service regulations 36 CFR Part 60 govern the National Register nomination process. So this picture in the background is the Carter Jail in Beckham County. Sorry, my screen froze up. There we go. So what the National Register does, basically it provides recognition of property's significance in history, architecture, archaeology, or engineering. It provides limited protection when a property is endangered by federal undertakings through Section 106. It provides the owner of an income-producing property the opportunity to receive investment tax credits for certified rehabilitation. And it provides the owner an opportunity to apply for matching grant in aid for restoration, rehabilitation when such funding is available. The background picture here is the jail in Chickasha. This one's been moved a few times. It was originally a shed used to store tools during construction of the courthouse in Grady County. You can now find it resting peacefully behind the large leg lamp statue east of the historic downtown historic district and the historic Rock Island Depot. So what the National Register does not do, does not restrict the use of the property. It does not restrict the sale of private property. It does not require continued maintenance of private property or any specific guidelines be followed in rehabilitation. It does not require the owner to give tours of your property or open it up to the public. It does not guarantee funds for restoration or guarantee perpetual maintenance of the property. It does not provide a tax credit for a private residential structure, and it does not provide a historic marker for the property. This jail in the background is the jail in Eufaula, McIntosh County. Somebody has gone in recently and painted it up a little bit. So what are the criteria for listing in the National Register and why this survey on early jails? There are 4 criteria. So criterion A, that are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of history. Criterion B, that are associated with the lives of persons significant in our past. Criterion C, that embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. And criterion D, that have yielded or may be likely to yield information in prehistory or history. Most calabooses in Oklahoma are deemed eligible for individual listing in the National Register, qualify under criterion A for law, and criterion C, 1 or 2 room jails. The Camargo jail in Dewey County, shown here, is eligible for National Register listing under criterion A, law, and criterion C, 1 room jail. So you have to remember, it's not always about the pretty mansions for listing on the National Register. I also tell people Arkansas has a phone booth listed, so the sky's the limit. 1 and 2 room jails are a building that can be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, so long as it meets the necessary criteria. Manitou Jail, built in 1922, is listed in the National Register for its historical significance under criterion A and for its architectural significance under criterion C. The Tamahaw Jail was listed in 1980. At the time of listing, it was the last remaining building associated with the town site of Tamahaw. The jail is located near a ferry landing on the Arkansas River and was one of the earliest port towns and trading centers for the Choctaw Nation in Indian Territory. The Tamahaw Jail was built circa 1895. Our office was recently contacted by a gentleman who is in the process of replacing the roof on the jail. The Scullyville County Jail was also listed in 1980. At the time of listing, the jail was the only extant building associated with the Scullyville County government in the Choctaw Nation. The jail was built in 1888. You can note the similar stone construction from the Tamahaw Jail. The survey report notes that native stone jails are predominantly located in the eastern half of the state. Up until about 10 years ago, the hanging tree was still visible across the road from the jail. This is the Canadian Jail and Livery Stable near the town of Canadian in Pittsburgh County. It's listed on the National Register together in 1979. The jail also dates to the territorial period, predating 1907. The concrete roof was later added in 1912. This was originally a 2-room jail. When I visited in 2023, I noted that the interior wall has since been removed. This is a brick and concrete structure. It's basically around 4.5 feet by 7 feet. In 1972, a frontier town was reconstructed around the jail and livery stables for a Hollywood set. I have yet to uncover the name of this movie. If anybody can come up with that, I'll throw you a free Chronicles book or something fun like that. It should be noted that upon the 2023 site visit, that the livery stable shown here is no longer extant. So how and why did this project start? In late 2022, our office received inquiries regarding the Calaboose and Marble City, Sequoyah County, shown here. The Marble City Jail was built in 1911. It's a poured or formed concrete construction, and also not all that different in style and construction as the Manitou Jail we saw earlier in almost the opposite corner of the state. This one also has a 2-bed bunk inside and a poured concrete pit toilet. The Marble City Jail is recommended individually eligible under criterion A and C. We've also received calls regarding other jails across the state, which in turn led to the Preservation Office conducting a thematic survey of all the early jails. As part of a thematic survey, a detailed historical context that covers information about the period, place, events that created or influenced or formed the backdrop to these resources is developed. The historical context for the Calaboose survey includes information on early native and settler systems of justice, construction methods and types of jails, causes of and needs for holding facilities, and development of municipalities. All SHPO thematic surveys are available at the link on this slide. Dokesville, shown here, is the earliest known remains of a jail in our state. The 3-cell jail and office area are seen right here in the picture. Municipalities across the Twin Territories began building these calabooses as early as 1840. In the early 1800s, native tribes located in the designated Indian Territory and in a clash of cultures would have to replace their judicial system of honor with the European system of incarceration, and would eventually be forced to close their tribal courts due to the federal Indian policies that sought to weaken and defund tribal governments. Prior to the opening of the unassigned lands in 1889, both the Indian Territory and the Oklahoma Territory would have a need for immediate housing for both local lawbreakers and those that are being transferred to federal holding facilities in Kansas and Arkansas. Prior to that, lawmen had to just basically either tie their prisoners to a tree or a porch post, or in some instances would even have to house them in their own homes. Municipalities in the state began building simple wood frame or combination sodwood calabooses as early as the 1840s. Only 4 wood frame jails are known to still exist: Skidee, which is shown here in Pawnee County, Chickasha, El Reno, which has the former Darlington Townsite Jail, and Gary. Skidee is the only one remaining in its original location, which makes it extremely unique as it's eligible under criterion A for law, criterion C for architecture as a 2-room wood frame jail, and it's also criterion D due to its archaeological setting and providing information on the construction methods of wood frame jails and materials. Most of the early wood frame jails were sold and hauled off by local residents or farmers after the completion of a more secured concrete jail. Farmers would pretty much have a ready-made chicken coop or hog shed, so it's very possible that there are a few more of these out there sitting around an old farm or homestead. The jail here in Skidee has a small area cut out of the inside wall, I noticed, that was once used at time to house the owner's hogs. The Calaboose in Gary is the earliest known wood frame structure still extant. However, it is no longer in its original location. Prisoners would have to rely on the deputy or local townspeople for food and water, and if they were lucky, would have access to a bucket for a latrine. While lumber shipped in on railroads to the Oklahoma Territory in the west or obtained from local sawmills in the eastern Indian Territory made for a quick fix, they were not the most secure, and as noted in several newspapers, they're not the safest. The style of jail no longer exists due to their naturally organic decaying, and because most communities removed them or sold them to be replaced by more secure concrete or rock jails as the community began to grow. This is a picture from 1926 showing the old jail in Cromwell, Seminole County. You can kind of see that the design was really up to the local builder and did not follow a specific pattern. This most likely would have been the jail that the famous Sheriff Bill Tillman would have used during his very brief stint as the city marshal of Cromwell before being shot and killed by a drunken prohibition agent. The problem with wood frame jails was that they were not secure and a danger to those being held. Attempts to break out of wood frame calabooses by means of burning one's way to freedom was apparently a problem nationwide. Before writing The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain worked as a syndicated columnist in Nevada, where in one of his monthly stories he described some of the inhumane methods of incarceration and one inmate's attempts at freedom. These are just a handful of newspaper articles describing the attempts of prisoners in Oklahoma attempting to burn down their holding cells and attempt to escape. Remember this 1927 article on the lower left-hand side about the Verdon jail not being fireproof. And I will take a drink and give you just a second to read some of these. All right, moving on. Sanborn and Clarkson insurance maps help identify the location of jails, dates of construction, and the materials used in their construction. Sanborn and Clarkson insurance maps show numerous communities shortly before and after statehood with ironclad calabooses. As indicated by the 1916 Sanborn of Foss in western Oklahoma, the calaboose is depicted by a yellow color that denotes it as a wood frame building with gray around the perimeter, indicating a metal exterior. These jails would have typically contained a metal cell inside that was not attached to the wood frame and metal exterior. Newspapers and insurance maps combined are also helpful tools in determining a building's provenance. While the sign on the Verdon jail would lead you to believe it was built in 1905, its actual build date is 1932. The 1909 Clarkson insurance map and this article from 1932 help verify the build date. Also, if you remember that article previously from the Chickasha Star in 1927, it describes a jail that was not fireproof in Verdon. The circle on the map is where the current jail is located and shows a wood frame building that is in a completely different shape or footprint. Prefabricated metal cells were a big business during the late 19th and early 20th century. While metal cells make for good tourist attractions, they're a bit misleading as they do not completely depict how these early holding cells would have looked. The metal cell in Foss and the double cell located in Perry were originally housed inside a wood frame building with a metal or ironclad exterior. So even Deputy Tillman here would not be leaving prisoners out in the elements. Companies that provided metal holding cells promoted their products and catalogs and also sent traveling salesmen through the territories, including E.T. Barnum, Champion Iron Works, Capital Iron Works, Stewart Jail Works, J.R. Anderson, and the Pauley Jail Company, which is still in business today and built the four-man steel cell at Foss. Pauley Jail records indicate they provided cells to the city of Caddo in 1888, Guthrie in 1890, and over 65 other town sites in Oklahoma, including the Oklahoma City Jail and Police Station in 1951 and 1962. The calaboose located in Vera, Washington County is the only known calaboose of a wood frame with metal or ironclad exterior design still in existence. You can see from the picture the jail has a separate metal bar entry door that leads into a double cell with individual cell doors. It should be noted that there appears to have been another opening at one time located at the back side of the building to allow ventilation in the summer. Tarleton in Pawnee County is an excellent example of a metal cell housed in a concrete exterior. The calaboose in Tarleton is the only known example of a metal cell housed in concrete. Unfortunately, no Sanborn maps exist for Tarleton. At the onset of statehood, expansion of municipalities meant the immediate need for these small jails, and with it came a reformation of how we treat our incarcerated individuals. Kate Bernard would become the state's first commissioner of charities and corrections. She was also the first woman elected as a state official in 1907. The duties of the commissioner would eventually be taken over by the Oklahoma Department of Corrections in 1979. Bernard's first annual report on the conditions of Oklahoma's jails, including the early calabooses, would be published in 1908. This report covered 6 months of, as she said, working with defectives, delinquents, and dependents of the new state, and covered the topics of prisons, forced labor in mines as part of prisoner labor in Kansas. Oklahoma inmates were shipped up to Kansas, punishment, juvenile prisoners, the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, hospitals for the insane, orphan homes, county jails, and local city jails. Bernard's comments on city jails are less than flattering, and notes in one inspection of a city calaboose that the city holdover is a disgrace to civilization, and that few holdovers have any provisions for water, night buckets, or beds, with most cases being full of filth, and the only bedding a few rags or straw thrown in the corner. The growth of local municipalities was funded through Senate Bill 263 as an emergency clause attached to Oklahoma State Statute 442. In 1919, that would appropriate sinking funds for the use of building of local courthouses and/or jails. So Senate Bill 263 was great for large municipalities. However, small rural communities had to self-fund any construction of holding facilities through the use of local taxes. This picture is what is left of the Bennington Jail in Bryan County. By 1920, town sites had begun building holdovers of formed concrete with steel barred ventilation openings and doors. These concrete calabooses are typically a simple square or rectangular design with either a flat or a slightly convex or barreled roof. Electricity and water lines appear as later additions to some of these calabooses. So this is the jail in Strang in Mays County. And you can kind of see here on the side, an afterthought was they had went in and ran electrical conduit. There was at one time a light fixture right up here. Concrete calabooses are either single cell or double cell designs. Double cell calabooses are typically separated in the middle by a small hall that separates the cells or has a separate front reception area. Some articles mention prisoners being held in one cell while the deputy used the second cell as an office. This is the Inola Jail on the top left and the Wayne Jail top right. And then along the bottom is the Choteau Jail, and you can see a hallway in the middle of that one. So Covington, Sentinel, Eakley, and Weber's Falls are all examples of two-room designs. Weber's Falls calaboose has 2 cells with the front reception area. I should probably add that the scenic view of the river was not available to inmates. There was no ventilation opening facing that direction. The Covington jail has a hall in the middle that separates the 2 cells. You can kind of see the community of Covington has pitched in to maintain its calaboose and has poured a concrete walkway around it. Covington's 2-room jail had running water and working toilets during its heyday as part of a community-involved upgrade in 1947. The Covington jail is currently going through the nomination process for the National Register. This is the interior of the Covington jail. The wood-burning stove was modified in 1947 to a gas burner. Indoor plumbing was added to meet required state inspection laws. Boswell City Jail is to date one of only 2 confirmed calabooses in the state built using WPA funding. The second one is located in Granfield and is of a cannonball-style architecture. The jail in Freedom, Oklahoma was built using PWA, Public Works funding, in 1935. However, its original purpose was the town's pump house and later being converted into the town jail shortly after construction. The WPA was formed in 1935 as part of President Roosevelt's New Deal policy. Boswell and Granfield would use this funding to employ local citizens to build their calabooses. It's very possible WPA funding was used to build other calabooses. However, research has not uncovered any records indicating thus far. The WPA Granfield Jail is a great example of locally quarried rock used for construction. and is the only known calaboose that exhibits a naturally formed cannonball rock exterior. So this new jail would be designated as the White Jail. Granfield's old jail, built in 1917, would be designated as the segregated jail upon completion of the nicer WPA-funded jail. These two jails sit roughly a half a block away from each other. This older jail is a contributing resource to the Granfield Downtown Historic District. Granfield was not the only town to have two separate calabooses during segregation. The community of Ryan has a two-room formed concrete jail that is still extant that was the designated White Jail, and this cylindrical formed concrete structure that looks to have originally been a silo that locals claim was at one point modified into the segregated calaboose. This post up here on top and these Christmas lights are obviously a later addition. Research indicates that the leading need for these calabooses was centered around Oklahoma's prohibition laws. Overnight oil boom towns and the drove of workers looking to blow off a little steam with their hard-earned paychecks created a recipe of lawlessness and the need for community drunk takes. You have to remember, Oklahoma entered the Union as the 46th state in 1907 as a strictly prohibition state, and we remained under prohibition until 1959 when citizens voted to end the practice. So this article describes the oil companies pitching in to build the Scheidler jail, in part from the influx of all the oil field workers having just a little too much fun up there. Mabel Bassett would continue Kate Bernard's fight for reform of the prison system and local lockups, such as is noted in this 1938 article describing Disney Oklahoma's system of tying prisoners to a tree before having built a designated calaboose. Disney's founder at the time made the argument that his community was financially handcuffed, providing schools, streets, and sidewalks. And as he says, the tree was really not being used as a jail, but as a penal hitching post. Disney in Mayes County is one of the later calabooses to be built in the state. This one was built in 1939. During the survey report, we documented 105 jails, 86 standalone, 7 metal cages, and 12 non-standalone. I should throw in there are a lot more metal cages out there. We just kind of quit documenting them. Build dates range from early 1800s, which was Dokesville, to the 1940 Granfield WPA jail that we saw earlier. There is a jail in Cache that is the outlier. It was built in 1960. It is basically just cinder block construction. Some communities made use of their vacant calabooses for other purposes. A newspaper article in the Ponca City News makes mention of Burbank's calaboose sitting empty for the most part, save for a bear that was captured by a local resident on a hunting trip in Minnesota. The locals mentioned the bear's cry when hungry sounded like a woman crying for help. Again, this is the one in Burbank in Osage County. Newspaper articles often make light of locals who are unfortunately incarcerated. The concrete block jail in Muldrow once held a local man who in 1919 rode his mule into the church after imbibing on a little too much of what they called white mule, soon to be slang for moonshine. This jail is also a rebuild of the Muldrow jail, as the original was dynamited by an unknown individual in 1948. The Canute Jail in Ouachita County was a second home for the Mers twins, Leo and Louie, as citizens recall back in the 60s. After driving their John Deere tractor to town on Saturday nights for several rounds at the local pub, the brothers would commence their weekend ritual of fighting anyone unfortunate to be in the same vicinity with them. Locals also note that if no one was available, they would fight each other, which led to their spending the night in the calaboose. Locals also tell the story of the jail's builder, Tom Nobles, who also holds the distinction of being the jail's first occupant a short time after finishing the job after being arrested for drunken disorderly conduct. Later on, Canute's mostly abandoned jail would be the designated secret spot for local poker players to meet up for a few hands after sneaking away from the Wise for a few hours. The secret spot was eventually compromised during one raucous game of cards when one of the losers locked the others inside and left them there. At least 4 Calabooses are known to have been raised within the last 15 years. Okarche between 2008 and 2013, Porter between 2013 and 2023, Stillwell, shown here in the picture, was raised in 2021, and then Lyman, which was the very first slide, was raised last summer, 2023. The jail in Lyman was the last remaining structure from the town. So as part of what we do, this is part of the story map, and I've included a link here. So this is a screenshot of our ArcGIS interactive story map showing approximately 105 Calabooses documented across the state. This works on your phone or computer. Clicking on a dot will bring up the location of the jail and a few pictures. I should note I didn't leave the panhandle out, but there does not appear to be any extant resources in that part of the state. Pine Valley, the picture here, was a sawmill town in southeastern Oklahoma that was only in existence for about 12 to 15 years. This jail is the only thing left of the town besides a few concrete footings. The jail sits in a farmer's field. I even had to help him with a few unruly bovines before he'd let me take some pictures. So the red dot are the documented resources. The gray are the resources that we know about but are not documented currently due to time restraints. If you're not able to copy any of these links down, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to send any links with the story map, the survey report, or any other information that you need.